So, I'm here to talk about my reading update as of this week, which is today is January 20th. I, Saturday the 16th, I officially finished reading the entirety of Maxine O'Callaghan's Delilah West mystery series. Unfortunately, all the books are piled up there, and I don't feel like pulling them down, and I might not even do a screenshot. But the point is that it took me 16 days to read five full novels. Most of them just barely cresting over 200 pages. And a collection of short stories. All of it is read. I have a lot that I want to say about that series and a lot that I really don't care to really express. I kind of want to just move on because I've spoken about her time and time again in the past two videos, but ultimately, I give the Delilah West 3 stars. I think one of the most hindering things that took place within that series or was illustrated was that the author never let her character grow. Delilah West was very much a static character. You can probably hear my neighbors chopping wood or something over there, but she was a very static character, and that was really unfortunate. And I think the worst book of the series was, in a lot of ways, was the final book, and that was unfortunate. Speaking from the perspective that um, O'Callaghan just made a simp out of Delilah West in terms of how she fell in love with this multi-billionaire real estate guy or something to do with property management, who in the middle of the series he saved her from financial ruins. And you know it's just really unfortunate that Delilah was just she was just a static character. She never really grew. I think some of that has to do with the sort of the staccato beat of the publication within that series. The introductory short story being published in 1974, and then an official release being published in 1980, and then the second book in 1981, the third one in 1989, the fourth one in 1991, the fifth one in 1996, and the seventh and final one in 1997. So there's that. I'm imagining that there's that brokenness in terms of the continuity of the publication. I guess you could say of the books that I don't know. Maybe like the author had to keep trying to readjust to a character, and instead of picking up where the books left off, it was in terms of trying to find some growth for the character. She just kind of picked up where the character was essentially. I don't know. I guess I'm not explaining it correctly or the way I want to. But at the end of the day, like I just said, the Delilah West series, Delilah West was a character who just never grew. You know what's really interesting though? I found that the short story collection, like the kernels or seeds of an investigation that were planted within the short story collection, and I say that kernels and seeds in terms of how she could probably have built that into like a full length novel. I found those to be much more interesting than the actual full length novel plots. The actual novels were, it was in just about every book there was a girl who went missing or was kidnapped, a crazy psychotic villain male character. I said this before, very formulaic in a lot of those books, but it's so funny that the actual short story collections, those kernels that could have been a full length novel, those were just way more interesting than the actual full length books. And I'm thinking to myself, why is that happening? Why is this happening? Why am I enjoying these short stories much more than the actual books? And a lot of that has to do not only with the what O'Callaghan presents to our character. Like one was about a woman who died in her bathtub, and the ex-husband was, of course, the first possible suspect. One story was about some fake diamonds that had Delilah West handcuffed and traveling from New York to LA with a briefcase, like a heist. I guess you could say, not really, but like, that whole genre, we'll say, of diamonds being transported. She was the mule for some fake diamonds that, there's just a story behind that. Another story was Delilah West was working for a in prison mob boss who wanted her to entrap one of his lackeys who at one point did something horrendous to his daughter. That was like the shortest story of them all, but they were all interesting. They, like I said, they were all really much more interesting than the actual books themselves in the series. And going back to my other point, I think one of the things that really made that those short stories so much more better is the fact that there was not any space for O'Callaghan to address Delilah's dilemma with this real estate or property manager who was her boyfriend, and the love elements didn't come into play. There was zero space for the love elements to come into play, which of course made the short stories much more interesting to me. Like I said before, love can be done, romance can be done, but like I always say, it just has to have this judicious factor to it. And I just never really cared for the love element within this series because, number one, like I said, the romantic interest, he saved Delilah from financial ruin, which in effect stumped her as her character growth and made her just a very static character. And even in that book where he was introduced and they were beginning the budding phases of their romance, he cheated on her. And so we spent about 4 books of her going back and forth about her in her conundrum or kerfuffle of whether or not she loved him genuinely and whether he loved her genuinely. And it was just, I won't say it was obnoxious, but it was rather tiresome to go through that. And I felt really bad for the Delilah West character because the author did this to her. Like, this was her treatment. And every corner, it constantly stumped her, having to deal with that. Yeah, she just never really grew to me. She never really blossomed. She doesn't have that personality range or scope as Sharon McComb, most certainly that of Kinsey Milhone, which is okay because Kinsey Milhone is a much more isolated kind of hermit of a character, which is fine. That's okay. I don't think they all should have the same thing, but it's just the overall expression of Delilah West was not as charismatic or bright as a lot of these other female private eye characters, despite, of course, Delilah West. I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust myself. Despite, of course, Delilah West being the first contemporary woman in private investigator genre. Lots of stuff. I always forget how to put all those words together. So I'm just happy that I finished the series. I'm happy that I buckled down and read them. I can say that the Delilah West series is completely under my belt, and yeah, there's a bit of sadness in having to let her go because she just didn't. She had a lot of potential that just got. She had a lot of potential, and she had the unfortunate being of finding herself overshadowed by her peers in terms of Kinsey Milhone and V.R. Warshawski and etc. etc. So it's done. I made a pledge and it's done. Maxine O'Callaghan's series is completely done. I'm thinking that what I want to do now is jump overseas and get into the English mystery, contemporary private investigative mystery author Liza Cody. Her series contains probably about 6 books, and I only have one, the first book in the series. So I'm thinking I might want to that'll be my next pledge on project, and I'll have them all kind of knocked out, the early ones. That would be Maxine O'Callaghan, American. There would be Maxine O'Callaghan, Marcia Muller, Sue Grafton, Sarah Presky. I already did the two parts from going back overseas of P.D. James's Cordelia Gray, which I think I need to read the second book again because I can't remember a lot of it, although the first book was fantastic. And then, of course, there's Liza Cody. And then I'll be moving on to like Linda Barnes and somebody's somebody like is just liked one of my reviews on Goodreads, a notification. Then I'll be moving on to like Linda Barnes and Nancy Pickard. I don't have Linda and someone else. Someone else. She's all the way over there, but I can't remember who she is. Anyway, that's in terms of female private investigator. So that's it. I'm done. Those are my final thoughts on the Maxine O'Callaghan series. This is just me documenting my thoughts on that. We're going to move on to something else now.